Samuel Solder very generously gave me a year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon and brings you today's video. Zimone and Dina versus Amara, Kenrith and Eleshnorn. A pretty slow one there. We can get our commander active pretty quickly with 1000-year elixir, but I'd like to try and get into some ramp there. We're not going to draw any lands here, are we? Yeah, okay, 2 lands, but hopefully we can get into a Kodama's Reach. The Thornbite Staff is a decent combo piece. Okay, we draw into a Scoot Swarm on turn 1, so just start off with Field of the Dead and put the Fear of God in everyone. See a turn 1 play from Eleshnorn, that is Leonin Elder. And getting into a land would be nice here. Okay, 3 visits is just as good, so not going to grab the Triumph with the fetch. We'll get a green and blue source, I think. No, we've got Bloodghast in the deck, and that's a pretty good source of combo potential, so I'll grab double black here. We'll get the Triome with the 3 visits. Ancient Tomb from Eleshnorn allows our opponent into a turn 2 Heliod, and we get hit for 1 by the Cat Cleric. At the end of Kenrith's turn, we see a Worldly Tutor for the Amara player, tutoring out an Esper Sentinel. So, as you would expect, Esper Sentinel hits play. Leonin Elder going to gain a life. Might be one of the better Soul Sisters, this, now, with all the treasures that we see in Magic the Gathering or in Commander nowadays. Okay, we draw into a land, so I think we'll be alright to go for the Scoot Swarm here. Maybe get some removal out of our opponent's hand. Don't normally play Scoot Swarm, but we need as many landfall make a token abilities as we can get our hands on in this deck for the combo potential. So get down the Sylvan Safekeeper as well, which can sacrifice lands for Shroud. Another Soul Sister, the Soul's Attendant this time. We need to be wary of the Mother of Machines actually, because it will switch off our landfall make a creature permanence. And now the 2/2 going in against the Esper Sentinel. Sylvan Library for Kenrith. So drawing the Esper Sentinel a card, and then throwing down what will be an all-star in this deck, a bounce land, Dimir Aqueduct. We've got 4 of these in the deck. Arcane Signet for Amara, which does trigger the Leonin Elder, so another plus counter off the Heliod, which does trigger the Leonin and puts a plus counter on the Soul's Attendant. As good as Heliod is, the downside of it is that it does put a hell of a lot of triggers on the stack, which is half the reason that I stopped playing it. Now seeing Imara, Soul of the Accord, so that will do the same again. Interesting idea for the Mother of Machines, doubling up the Soul Sister triggers. Okay, Fierce Guardianship feels good, so yeah, as much as I'd like to go for Kodama's Reach here, maybe that's still a good idea because we might see the Mother of Machines next turn, so yeah, I was going to get down my commander because it gets Summoning Sickness away from it, but Kodama's Reach into Scoot Swarm is probably a better idea. Pay into the Esper Sentinel. So I'll get Forest into play tapped, and we haven't played a land this turn, so I'll get the Island into play as our land for the turn. Scoot Swarm triggers on both of these lands, of course. So we'll get an Insect, which will trigger the Soul's Attendant. Not sure our opponent will want to switch off our landfall stuff with the Eleshnorn, especially not if we're enabling them like this. Anyway, we've got 2 Scoot Swarms in play now, so assuming that we can actually trigger landfall, we should be able to start doing some crazy stuff in the next few turns, hopefully. A Faladar Retreat from our opponent, so maybe doesn't have the land for their commander. Triggers the Esper Sentinel and obviously can't pay for it, so Esper Sentinel drawing some cards in the early game as it tends to. Okay, does have a land, the Flagstones of Trocare, so just wants to make a token here. And that will end up with a counter thanks to the Soul's Attendant and Heliod combo. The 4/4 Leonin swinging in towards us. Yeah, we're probably okay blocking that. The 3/3 goes in down the middle. So yeah, we'll just save ourselves a little bit of life here. Need to be careful with how many tokens we don't have in play, because we obviously need to sacrifice them to our commander. But we're not going to be able to do it next turn as it stands now, because it's going to have Summoning Sickness on it. Alright, and there's the Blasphemous Act. So yeah, early board wipe hurts, especially when we haven't seen the Eleshnorn yet. Yeah, maybe should have gone for the commander then, because we could have held up the Fierce Guardianship for that one. Then our opponent throws down a Coalition Relic. Sensei's Top from the Celestia player. followed up with a Leafkin Druid, and then spinning the top. Okay, getting to another land. I actually forgot to mix up the basics here. I'd normally put snow basics in with Field of the Dead. Might have half a chance of starting to trigger it here if I had done that. So do we just get a token down while we can here with the Rampaging Baloths? It's making us even slower, getting down our Zimone and Dina. But there are means of giving our commander haste, and 1000-year Elixir will allow it to tap down for its ability straight away. The Tyvar Planeswalker, the new one from the previous set, that will allow us to go faster as well. Yep, and that's why I wanted to get down the Baloth straight away, because Elishnorn, Mother of Machines, comes into play. And yeah, that's a pretty rough one. 7 toughness on a 5-mana commander. Have the Arch of Orazca over on Kenrith's side of the field now, and there's a Mystic Remora. And then Memory Side is targeting us. Choose a non-land card name and search the hand, library and graveyard for it. And it's noteworthy that they've chosen Kraytooth Behemoth there. I was considering that in the deck, but yeah, decided on more of an aristocrat theme instead if we're going for lots of landfall tokens. So no Kraytooth in here. Imara into play here. And then spinning the Sensei's Divining Top. Noteworthy that a land here is V2 Ghazi, the City Tree. Okay, we see a Tear Asunder here, which can get rid of that Elishnorn for us. And we can actually get down our commander here as well, which is good. So, yeah, if we tap like that, we should be able to hold up the Tear Asunder. But I won't cast it until we need to. I'm just going to hope that our opponent doesn't have a protection spell. So I'll go for Rampaging Baloths down the middle, the Beast to the right. Knight of the White Orchid from the Elishnorn. They've got 4 lands in play at the moment. So yeah, with us they should be able to get both of the lands into play here. So Elishnorn doing a better job of landfall than we are at the moment. Making 2 cat tokens on the first trigger. Allowing my opponent to do this, of course, so that we can make him look like more of a threat. Might be able to get these 2 to point spot removal over here. So now it's a couple of plus counters on all of our opponent's stuff. Making the Heliod an 8/8 with Vigilance and Indestructible, a 6/9 with Vigilance as well. Okay, the Heliod goes down the middle. And yeah, Elishnorn coming at us as we would expect. So even if they get down a land here, they're not going to be able to afford to get down their Elishnorn again, I don't think. So I think it's safe to get rid of the Elishnorn here. We'll punish them for swinging in at us. Mystic Remora going to trigger for the player in the middle, and we'll draw them a card. It's noteworthy, this will actually remove the Heliod from combat, so yeah, the Kenrith player can thank me later. Alright, an acrobatic removal. Exile a creature you control, then return it under its owner's control. We don't want to see the Elishnorn hit play again, so I'm going to use the Fierce Guardianship. And Mystic Remora doing what Mystic Remora does. I'm going to draw 3 cards here. So the Wooburg player's hand is pretty much refilled here. Dockside Extortionist now from Kenrith. I think that will only make 4 treasure tokens by my count. Noteworthy there is a Makokoro over here as well now. Playing a Battle Invasion of Zendikar. And it will be the mono white player who has to defend that. A Generous Patron coming into play after that. Putting the plus counters over on the Celestia player's creatures here. And the Generous Patron has them draw 2 cards there, of course. Don't often see this card played outside of Group Hug and Counters decks, but yeah, it is 3 mana to draw 2 cards effectively, as long as your opponents have creatures in play. A Rex Sage from the Imara player. Tap down all the white mana, curiously, so that might be very telling. And that is going to blow up the Felidar Retreat, making it even more difficult for Heliod to be animated. And then the Reclamation Sage was tapped down there, so maybe there's a Convoke spell that our opponent can cast. The now 3/3 Imara tapping down to go into the red zone and attacking down the middle here. That will make a 1/1 token. The 1/4 jumping in the way of the commander, as you would expect. Sensei's Divining Top being spun, and then tapping down the Sensei's Top to draw a card, so wanted to get into that Plains, I think. Might have made a mistake tapping down all that white mana. They do control 4 or more creatures now, so the Leafkin Druid can tap for 2 mana, and it allows our opponent into that Convoke spell. Exile a target non-land permanent until this leaves the battlefield. Mystic Remora drawing a card again. And that goes after the Mystic Remora, curiously. Yeah, I'd usually just wait for that thing to die of its own accord, to be honest, although our opponent can probably keep it in play for another couple of turns, so might be worth getting rid of. So now it's our turn, see if we can get into a decent draw here. I wouldn't be against a land. Okay, Zendikar's Royal. I think it's probably better to just get the Thornbite Staff going, to be honest. So I'll play the Thornbite Staff and attempt to equip it here. Obviously goes onto our commander, because when we sacrifice something with this equipped, it will untap our commander and is part of a combo. Not that I'm too hopeful for being able to get into the combo anytime soon. Now, the mono white player might keep coming in at us. Might have to worry about something big and hasty from Kenrith. Still not sure what this player's doing yet, so I'm just going to hold back my blockers, I think. Although if we're going to sack the beast anyway, yeah, maybe we can encourage our opponent to get rid of one of these vanilla creatures. What are now vanilla creatures, now that they're in play. Our opponent just decided to take it, so going down to 19 means he can't take too much to the Sylvan Library. Deciding to play reactionary with Zimone, because if someone has targeted removal for it, they might use it in response to us going for the Thornbite Staff and Zimone activation. So we'd like to wait for them to try and remove this first and then do it in response. The mono white player going straight through to combat, and really has it in for us. I think they might be able to flicker the Knight of the White Orchid as much as it would be a good thing to get rid of this. Especially with it having first strike, I think they might want to flicker it, otherwise they wouldn't have given up on it so easily. Either that or this is a board wipe. So yeah, I suppose they can just flicker it after combat, can't they? Anyway, we'll get rid of a token if we can. So we take a big hit for 8 with Zimone's trigger on the stack. I think I'm going to go for... yeah, let's sacrifice with Zimone's ability, get rid of this token, and try our luck, see if we can get into a land. We do not get into a land, do get into more mana though. And obviously don't repeat the process because we didn't see a land there, so... We've at least got a means of sacrificing the Rampaging Bailots if an opponent does have some removal for that. Alright, a Rite of Replication going on to the Generous Patron. Not kicking that though, so just making the one copy of the Generous Patron puts. They put a counter on the Reclamation Sage as well, so each of their Generous Patrons triggers twice, because obviously 2+ counters were put on there. So seeing some nice Generous Patron tech here, making copies of that. Circuitous Route now. A Llanowar Scout after that. Not with that the Elesh Norn didn't get down Elesh Norn again, which is good for us with all the landfall stuff, but not sure what he'd be holding up. A White Sun Zenith, something like that maybe. And now a Wayfarer's Bauble, the 5-colour player at 8 cards in hand, can't crack that Wayfarer's Bauble. A counter being put on the Rampaging Bailots and the Reclamation Sage. So each of those Generous Patrons triggering twice thanks to the 2+ counters. Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite is going to buff our opponent's army. It's only going to kill off one creature, surprisingly. But again, we have our back to the wall against the Elesh Norn cards, because those can really hurt our landfall token strategies, one of which is in our hand. I was hoping to get down Azusa next turn so that we could sacrifice it to the Zimone and Dina, but yeah, apparently that's not going to happen. Obviously they drew into the Sensei's Top again at the beginning of this turn, so replaying that. And then Imara going in at the mono white player, so going to make what will be a 3/3 token. Okay, we draw into a Tiller Engine, which will survive the Elesh Norn. So yeah, I suppose we can play that. We're not going to be doing a whole lot of anything else until we can actually hit lands. Might have to sacrifice the Tiller Engine to our commander. And we might as well get down the Zendikar's Royal here. Someone might be able to deal with the Grand Cenobite at some point. So I don't mind going through to the end step here. See if the mono white player does anything. We could sacrifice the Tiller Engine in response, maybe. The white player is definitely holding up priority. Yeah, surprisingly, Elesh Norn didn't do anything during the end of our turn there, so I'm sure they could have replayed their commander. Not sure why they didn't. Maybe passed through the main phase by accident. Alright, and there we see the Fumigate, so yeah, might as well just go for the Zimone now. Sacrifice the Tiller Engine. We're going to lose our creatures anyway. So Zimone and Dina are untapped immediately. We draw into Sky Shroud Claims, so yeah, 38 lands in this deck, but we're not having the best of luck getting into them, unfortunately. We'll sacrifice the Rampaging Bailots as well. And once again, it untaps immediately thanks to the staff. And it's a Toxic Deluge, so We'll be able to wipe the board again before we get down our commander if we feel as though that's an issue. Going to target the 5 colour player here because we need to start seeing an end to this game. I think it is turn 8. The Fumigate is going to be able to pile up plus counters onto the Heliod. Fortunately for us, they're not going to be able to animate it anytime soon. Although there is that new Phyrexian card from the recent set that's 4 pips, and that could animate it all by itself. And that does at least get rid of the Grand Cenobite over here, so we'll start being able to make tokens again. Okay, they didn't put a bunch of plus counters on the Heliod. This isn't a May ability, so not sure what happened there. That might be bugged. Oh, of course, it's not a series of... Yeah, you don't get a bunch of triggers on the stat with this. You just gain a bunch of life in one hit, so only 1 plus counter going on the Heliod. Getting down an Inspiring Overseer, which gains a life and puts a plus counter on itself, as well as cantripping. Sakura Tribe Elder for Kenrith. And we finally see Kenrith, the Returned King, come into play, so it may well be worth going for this Toxic Deluge. Then it is Zirda the Dawnwaker, which I'm sure will be part of a combo in a deck like this, so tempts me even further. Then dropping a Boros Garrison, Kenrith gaining 5 life, and then gaining 5 life again, so going back up to 18. Imara spins the Sensei's Divining Top at the end of the turn. See another commander in Imara, Soul of the Accord, enter play, so I'm wondering if we go through another turn cycle and try and wrap up this commander in the Toxic Deluge, which means we can't do too much next turn, annoyingly. Okay, a mana drain for us. Yeah, I think I would like to, especially now that we've got mana drain held up, we can maybe keep this player off a combo. So why don't we just go for Sky Shroud Claim instead? And that will be able to switch on the Field of the Dead as well. Yeah, we could get down our commander and hold up the mana drain still, but I just don't like our odds of outracing our opponents here. It's unfortunate because the tokens are going to be pretty useless next turn. We'll get down our commander here. I don't like it, but there's nothing to stop us wiping it with the Toxic Deluge anyway next turn. And we can always counter the white player if they go for a Wrath of their own. Wayfarer's Bauble being sacrificed in response by the 5 colour player. So we will get down our commander again. And like I said, we're holding up the mana drain mana in the hope that we can actually make it through a turn cycle with our Zimone and Dina intact, because we haven't got into one of our means of being able to tap that down at instant speed, unfortunately. Okay, there's a Sun Titan from our opponent. What are they going after there? Probably the Soul Sisters. Yeah, they're the only targets they've got. They've got a Knight of the White Orchid they could go after as well. We will allow a Sun Titan. It is the Knight of the White Orchid that they go after, so they will get another Plains into play here. Now the 9/9 Heliod swings in down the middle along with a 3/2 flyer, so a potential 12 damage going over there. Luckily we've got the mana drain held up for the 5 colour player's turn, so they decide to take this damage on the hope that they'll be able to combo off next turn. Hopefully we'll be able to throw a spanner in the works there, although the 5 colour player may well have counter magic backup of his own. Does decide to take the damage, so he's very keen to keep the Zirda. Although, yeah, I suppose as well, can also just pay a single white at this point to gain 5 life, so yeah, maybe not as worried about taking damage as he might be. If we decide to go for the Toxic Deluge, then the Heliod Suncrown is obviously animated now, so we can wrap that up in the board wipe as well. We'd have to be careful on the number of plus counters this can get for a single mana. Anyway, they gain 5 life again there. They're just going to keep doing that until they're at a very safe point in the game, I think. A day side. Exile the target enchantment. That's fitting, considering the set it came from. So obviously pointing that at the Heliod over there. Heliod in response going to give the Sun Titan lifelink. And then we see an E-Witness from our opponent. So E-Witness being pointed at the Blasphemous Act. And going to hold that over our heads for the rest of the game if he can. Which is good to know about because we do have the Toxic Deluge that we don't necessarily have to use now. Now it's a Lobotomy targeting the mono white player. And they do reveal their hand here. That is a Cavalier of Dawn, a Semester's End, and a Faith's Reward. They took the Cavalier of Dawn. So they've searched someone's library a couple of times here. They've used, what was it, the memory side to search our library. Now they've used their lobotomy to look through this player's library, so I'm not sure what that's in aid of. Maybe looking for weaknesses against their own deck. Or maybe they just like looking through people's lists. Alright, there's Blasphemous Act. We do not want to see that. So we're going to have to go for the counter. Alright, and getting that player to scoop, amazingly. I hope we still get the mana from Mana Drain. I'm not entirely sure it's going to be relevant, but yeah, scooping at instant speed like that, especially when they're in a good position. Yeah, that's Magic Online for you. Just one more player to ban. So Sensei's Divining Top is going to be spun at the beginning of the turn. Temple of Plenty for the Celestia player. Imara playing Tristana Discordant, another Celestia card, so yeah, that will give an Anthem effect. Still doesn't have a good attack with Imara, so we're looking in a half-decent position now, thanks to the 5-colour player deciding to scoop on us. Okay, and yeah, that's a pretty damn good draw for us, especially with an Azusa in play. So, we can drop the Azusa, I think is fine here. Then we'll equip the Zimone and Dina with the Thornbite Staff. And we're not going to attack in, so let's just see what we can draw. Get rid of an Elemental. Zimone and Dina untap, thanks to the Thornbite Staff. We draw a card, that is a land, so we'll get down the Forest as opposed to the Bounce Land. Haven't made a land drop yet for this turn. Repeating the process is a Tireless Provisioner. Yeah, we might as well just make landfall with the Golgari Rot Farm. It's just going to bounce itself here. And we'll point the drain over at Imara. Obviously getting landfall from Field of the Dead and Zendikar's Royal. We made lands twice there. Golgari Rot Farm's trigger resolves, and we bounce it back to its own ability. Make sure I'm tapping the right land, or clicking the right land. So do we care about... Yeah, I think we get down the Tireless Provisioner here, because we can make mana with it. I think it's going to be a worthwhile investment for us. And then we activate our commander again, go for the Elemental token. And we're always going to be able to make landfall thanks to the bounce land. There is an island, so we'll just throw that into play. We'll ramp as much as we can. A Skull Clamp is really nice. Put the Golgari Rot Farm into play again, and it's just rinse and repeat here. And don't forget, we haven't made any land drops yet. We've got 3 of those with the Azusa. So we can make plenty of treasures if we get into something that we feel as though is relevant. Activate our commander again on an Elemental. And yeah, the mono white player scoops. I mean, we do just combo off here at this point, I think. It's just going to take a hell of a long time to do it, I imagine. And now we're finally starting to get into the lands off the top after waiting the whole game. You have a Maya, and there's a Swamp. And let's spend some of this treasure mana to get through our deck a bit faster. We'll Skull Clamp on the Elemental that we're about to sacrifice. We draw with the Skull Clamp first. So getting into a Swamp, a 1000-year Elixir and a Tatyova will get us through our deck much faster as well. And then drawing another card because Zimone and Dina sees 8 or more lands. That is a Painful Truth, so Golgari Rot Farm is played and bounces itself again. And yeah, the importance of these bounce lands in this deck can't be understated. Clamp onto an Elemental, and we'll do it again. Don't quite have the mana to go for Tatyova just yet. But we're seeing exactly why I decided to tap the mana into the Tireless Provisioner here, because the extra mana is absolutely relevant. Drawing to Strip Mine, which I've played, the Chasm Skulker, Icy, and a Nature's Law. So it's Golgari Rot Farm yet again. Some funny things going on in the chat here. I'll let you have a read of that in the meantime. Decided to play out Tatyova, and I'll use one of my landfall triggers from the Golgari Rot Farm, so 2 left at the moment, to trigger the Tatyova here. That will give us a treasure token to equip the Skull Clamp and carry on. Alright, drawn into another bounce land, the Guiltless Commons, and a couple of fetches I've played in with these Zimone and Dina. We get into one of our beneficiaries, I suppose we could call it, one of our win cons. For actually chaining off like this, we'll be able to start draining our opponent. Tatyova draws us 2. We obviously drew some with the Skull Clamp as well. Drew into another enchantment, Bastion of Remembrance, which will trigger on us getting down or sacrificing creatures, which is obviously the whole point. So we'll just go for the Retreat to Hagra first. Yeah, so I'm not going to waste any more of my opponent's time. It's already been like 10 minutes plus of Solitaire. He's been a really good sport about it and letting us do all this stuff, but effectively, landfall, drain our opponent. Every time we sacrifice a creature to our commander's ability, it's more drain with the Bastion of Remembrance, and we basically just go off from here. Not going to deck ourselves because I've sacrificed the Tatyova, not going to equip the Skull Clamp. So with 36 cards in the library to our opponent's 27 life, we do combo off here successfully. So massive thank you to my opponent again, and hopefully you all enjoyed it and you're not too bored of the videos like a certain someone else is. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.